Hi, everyone. You're listening to Radio Cherry Bombe, and I'm your host, Carrie Diamond, coming to you from Newsstand Studios at Rockefeller Center in the heart of New York City. I'm the founder and editor of Cherry Bombe magazine. On today's show, I'm talking with Caroline Chambers, author, recipe developer, and Substack queen. Her Substack newsletter, What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking, has more than 165,000 subscribers. Yes, 165,000. I know a lot of you are curious about Substack, so you are probably wondering, how did she do it? We'll find out in just a few minutes. We'll learn how being a mom and a military wife shaped her career, the steps she took to social media and Substack success, and we talk about her brand new book, which is also titled What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking. It's Caroline's second book. She's very proud of it, and it is out tomorrow. Stay tuned for my chat with Caroline Chambers. This episode of Radio Cherry Bombe is supported by Open Table. As you may know, we've been on the road this summer with Open Table for our Sit With Us community dinner series, which highlighted amazing female chefs and restaurateurs in the Cherry Bombe and Open Table networks. Thank you to everyone who joined us and to the amazing chefs and teams at the featured restaurants. We kicked things off in early June in New Orleans with Chef Melissa Arujo at Alma, and then we headed to Atlanta for an evening with Laban Nosh with Chef Ro Vakili. We were in Dallas at Jose with Chef Anastasia Quinones Pittman, and we had a sweet ending to our series at Nostrana in Portland, Oregon with Chef Kathy Wims. It was such a treat meeting so many of you. Beautiful food, beautiful people. It's been so much fun. Thank you to Open Table for bringing these experiences to life with us. By the way, if you are interested in curated dining events like the Sit With Us dinners, check out the Open Table experiences on their app and website. Head to opentable.com/experiences to explore what's happening near you, or use it to find fun events to enjoy on your travels, like Open Table's Summer Sets, a dinner series that combines music and food to create one-of-a-kind evenings in cities like Miami and New Orleans. If you love all things wine, Cherry Bombe has a special event coming up this October 26th and 27th called Jubilee Wine Country. It's taking place at the beautiful Solage Resort in Calistoga, California. Jubilee Wine Country will feature 2 days of talks, panel discussions, a picnic lunch, a baker's breakfast, our big wine, women, and song event on Saturday night, and lots more. Our keynote speaker is none other than Chef Dominique Crenn, and we'll have amazing folks there all weekend long. For tickets and more information, visit cherrybombe.com. Now, let's check in with today's guest. Caroline Chambers, welcome to Radio Cherry Bombe.
I'm so happy to be here. It's the hottest day in New York City, and here we are in a cool booth. I'm so happy to be with you.
It is a hot day in New York City. Yesterday might have been hotter.
Oh, well, thank God I came today then.
Yeah.
I flew into New York last night. I landed at 10 p.m. and it was 85 degrees still.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, okay.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
You are from Carmel?
So I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So I should be used to the humidity.
Amazing tradition of female chefs
Yes.
from North Carolina.
Oh my gosh, yes,
we can talk about that later.
Yeah, we can.
Ashley Christensen, Vivian Howard.
Ashley and Vivian. Yeah, Vivian's also, we have the same book agent, and I'm obsessed with her. She doesn't know who I am, but God, I think she's so cool.
Let's go back a little bit. How did you get into food?
Sure. So, like I said, I'm from North Carolina, grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and my mom is from Tennessee. My mom got really good at developing and creating like kind of healthier Southern food when she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 30. So she was always creating like sort of healthier spins on Southern food. And so I very much grew up in the kitchen cooking with my mom. And that was sort of my first in. And then after college, I went to UNC Chapel Hill, moved to New York. I worked in advertising and I worked on food and bev clients mostly. Don Julio Tequila was one of my clients. And I basically like was in charge of running this huge food campaign with all these really cool chefs and like pairings, and Lil Jon was also involved, and I like went to a lot of nightclubs with Lil Jon, but lots of like really cool chef people were, working on this campaign with me. So I was like, I want to do that. But this is like sort of Instagram is just starting. We've got like the Debs of the world, like Smitten Kitchen. There's some food blogging going on, but I was like, I don't know if that's for me. So I just kind of like couldn't figure out what my in was.
What did you study in school?
International studies.
Okay. What did you think you would do?
Well, there was a moment where I thought I would work for the State Department. That was quickly shattered. I kind of just kept going with it. I love travel. The International Studies Department at UNC is very cool. So you got to take a lot of cool classes. It was just kind of like, a very liberal arts, like, I want to learn about what's cool. So
I think the State Department has a culinary corps, though. Do you know about this?
No. Wait,
yeah.
actually, I do because I saw Jenny, Jenny's Ice Cream.
Yep, Jenny Britton Bauer.
Posted about it
Yeah.
recently. Okay.
A lot of folks in the Cherry Bombe community are part of it. We have to figure out how to get
I
you
was gonna
connected
say,
into that.
That could be a real full circle moment. Okay, Bomb Squad, if you know how to get me involved, I want to be in the culinary corps.
All right, so you're partying in nightclubs,
I'm
promoting
partying in
tequila.
nightclubs. My husband, George, at this point is in San Diego training to become a Navy SEAL. So we got engaged. We got married at New York City Hall on like a rare day that we could both take off from work. So he was in SEAL training. I moved out to be with him. And basically he was like, you don't like advertising. Like,
Wait, you left New York. You left your
Yes.
whole life and
Yes.
moved out
Oh,
to
yeah.
California.
Very young. We got married really young. I think we got engaged when I was 21, married at City Hall a few weeks later, and then he deployed to Afghanistan, and we had a big wedding in North Carolina when he got back. So I think I was 22 at that point, maybe 23. And then we moved across the country. My moves and my life has very much been dictated by the military. He's been out for many years, but even, kind of his like post-military life, like where we've ended up has been driven by that as well. So moved out to San Diego.
Any qualms about leaving New York and your
Yes,
career?
I did. It was really hard for me at first to just as, an independent woman who doesn't want her husband's career to dictate her entire life and career. It was really hard for me at the beginning to kind of wrap my head around that. And then I had dinner with a SEAL wife friend. This is once we were in San Diego, so I was kind of still dealing with this and wrapping my head around it. And I had dinner with a SEAL wife friend, and she was like, you can either always be fussed by this and, have a hard time with it, or you can just lean into the fact that this is not your whole life. This is George will max stay in 20 years. He ended up staying in about 10 years. And then the world is your oyster. Like, you can go anywhere. Like, this is a very short, actually, moment in life. Also, what an incredible way to be able to support him and also support our country in doing so. And I was like, all right, what's the point of
Fighting it.
Yeah, fighting it and being upset by it. And so I just kind of like fully leaned into military wife status, and that went much better.
And were you cooking the whole time?
So when we moved out to San Diego, George was like, you don't like advertising. You want to work in food. Figure it out. And again, this is like the early days of Instagram, like food blogging. I was like, I don't know my place. So I wound up opening a catering business, very fly by the seat of my pants. And I started really small and sort of did my own culinary school by like doing little birthday parties and little dinner parties. And I had always cooked for like huge groups of people. Like, it was always my passion. In New York, in this huge crazy apartment that I lived on Broadway, we were always throwing huge dinner parties. And so I knew, how to do it, but certainly not professionally. So I started small, and then by the end I was doing like 300-person weddings. Sometimes I'll wake up and I'll have been having a dream about catering this 300-person wedding and not having a clue what I was doing. But the Bomb Squad knows you just start and you just kind of
I'm very impressed.
figure it out.
Catering is not for the weak.
Catering is not for the weak, and I think I am weak because it only lasted about 3 years. When he got out of the military, we moved up to Northern California because George went to Stanford. So again, my life continues to follow him around, but we got over that.
You were in Palo Alto
We
for
were
a
in
while?
Palo Alto for a while. So I stopped the catering and I worked at a test kitchen in San Francisco for a few years, the Culinary Edge.
Huh.
So they do recipe development for brands that basically don't have in-house chefs, or they have like a lead chef, but they don't have like a main culinary kitchen. So Quiznos was one of my big projects. We basically were in charge of fully fixing their back of house operations. So that's a tricky job because you've like got 14-year-olds in like Minnesota who have never worked in a restaurant before trying to work the line. So that's the experience that I credit with really learning how to write really good recipes, because I had to write them for the 14-year-old in Minnesota who had never worked in a restaurant to be able to follow and really execute and do a really good job at.
We'll be right back with today's guest. Today's episode is also supported by Pernod Ricard, creators of conviviality. Pernod Ricard is a worldwide leader in the spirits and wine industry and embraces the spirit of conviviality, as we all should, and is focused firmly on a sustainable and responsible future. Their prestigious portfolio of brands includes classic names beloved by bartenders and mixologists around the world. There's the Glenlivet Single Malt Scotch, Martell Cognac, and Código 1530 Tequila, just to name a few. If you are a regular listener, you know my preferred drink is always bubbles, so I love a glass of Perrier-Jouët champagne to kick off a special night out, and I also love a champagne cocktail. My favorite is a French 75, which you can make with Perrier-Jouët Grand Cru and some Malfy gin. That sounds lovely, doesn't it? To learn more about Pernod Ricard, head to pernod-ricard.com. And don't forget, always drink responsibly. The new issue of Cherry Bomb's print magazine is now available, and it's all about Paris, the city of the summer. Chef Dominique Crenn is on the cover, and the inside features our ultimate guide to female-fueled Paris. If you want to know what women on the culinary scene in Paris are up to, you don't want to miss this issue. We've got info on all the restaurants, cafes, bakeries, ice cream shops, boutiques, and more, run by the most interesting, creative, and dynamic women in the city. Whether you're visiting this summer or dreaming about a trip, be sure to pick up our Paris issue. You can find Cherry Bombe magazine at your favorite shop or bookstore, places like Fan Donuts in Brooklyn, Parker and Otis in Durham, North Carolina, and Stella's Fine Market in Beacon, New York. Also, there's a special promo for the Bombe Squad running right now. Buy the Paris issue plus any Cherry Bombe subscription and get free shipping. Just use code PARIS at checkout. This job sounds so fascinating to me. Is this
Yeah.
company still around?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was incredible. It was a really hard workplace. So I was the only female in a test kitchen with 5 men who were all fine dining backgrounds. And they treated it like that. And like Watchers of the Bear, I can't watch The Bear because it gives me like PTSD. I worked there for like a year and a half. It was a hard year and a half. But I do credit it with really getting my chops in writing great recipes. Like I'll look at my recipes pre the Culinary Edge and I'm like, oh gosh, she did not know how to write a recipe properly. And then after, it's like precision military. It's like total muscle memory, like in my blood to like write it the correct way.
It was like your
now.
boot camp.
It was my boot camp. It was my Navy. It was my buds.
Because you
Training.
didn't go to culinary school.
I did not go to culinary school. We were in the military. We were a young military couple. I looked at it. We just couldn't afford it. And so that's when I just was like, F it. I'll start a catering business.
So what came next?
Okay, so I did my stint at TCE, the Culinary Edge. And then following George again, this is going to become a theme. His intern summer of business school, he was coming to New York. And I was like, well, get me out of here because I'm being the bear screamed at and I don't like it here. And so I had always side hustled. So during catering, I was always side hustling, doing like recipe development for magazines and stuff. And during TCE, I was always side hustling, like coming home at night, developing recipes for little brands, magazines, whatever it was. So I kind of built up this freelance portfolio at this point, enough that I was like, all right, I can leave this and become a full-time freelance recipe developer. So I left TCE. I moved to New York with George for the summer. We rented this amazing, bizarre, lofty thing in Tribeca. I cold emailed Andrew Scrivani, who is an amazing food photographer, and he shoots a lot of the New York Times columns. And I just saw his name underneath Melissa Clark's column. I love Melissa Clark, and she's like one of my big inspirations. He shoots most of her stuff for the Times. And so I found his info. I had a friend who worked at the Times, got me his email, and cold emailed him and was like, hey, any chance you need help food styling or anything for the summer, I'm here. And his food stylist was in the Hamptons for the summer. And so I got to just plug in and pop right in as his assistant food stylist. So he's a photographer. His wife is the prop stylist. And I food styled for him for the summer. And it was the best food media education. Again, those people who are, the TCE was such an amazing boot camp education. This was such a boot camp into New York City fast-paced food media world. So I did that for the summer, and it was such an incredible education. I reconnected with a friend from UNC, Sarah Smith, who's a literary agent and does a lot of cookbooks. She's at David Black Agency. And I reconnected with her, and she was like, okay, you're working in the food world now. I was like, yeah, I'm getting out of catering into freelance. Like, let me know if you ever need anyone to test for cookbooks, da-da-da. That intro. She's like, would you ever want to write your own cookbook? And I was like, Yeah, eventually, but like, who am I? What's my POV on food?
Yeah, and
Like,
who were you? Did you have Instagram? Did you have a
no, I
blog?
was like
No.
just kind of playing with Instagram. Like, if I took a really cool food picture, I'd share it. Maybe, if I styled something for Andrew, I'd share it. I used it really then as a portfolio more than a connection tool. It was not popping off in any capacity. Let's say that. So, yeah, I was like, yeah, someday I need to have like a really specific POV on food. I don't want to just be like another girl writing a cookbook. And so, yeah, someday, maybe.
So amazing that you got from there to where you are
Yes.
today.
So Sarah calls me a month later. We were in Bangkok for another internship of George's for a month. And we're in Bangkok. And Sarah calls me and it's like, crazy thing. I just had a meeting with Chronicle Books and they are looking for a newlywed recipe developer to write a cookbook. And I was like, what? They don't have to be famous? And she was like, they, in fact, preferred not to be because Chronicle kind of wanted to like own the process. And Chronicle wanted it to be their book with a writer, basically. And so I wrote a proposal. I think I was sort of competing with a few other newlywed recipe developers. And I got this cookbook deal, which is, as you know, a really weird way to get a cookbook deal. I had no following. I had no presence. But this is 2015.
That's so interesting. So there really wasn't a lot of pressure on you to do anything other than deliver
Yeah.
a great book.
Yes,
I
exactly.
mean, that's a big thing.
A huge
But
amount of pressure.
you didn't have to have a public profile.
Yes. Yes. I didn't know at the time how rare of an experience that was. I was like, oh, cool, write a cookbook. Yeah, done. I think I had like 7 months to write it. Wrote this cookbook called Just Married. It still sells very well with Chronicle. It's at Crate and Barrel. It's lots of places. It's a beautiful book. That was my first entrance into the cookbook world. So I wrote Just Married, and then I had a baby 2 months later. I had my first son, Mattis, and I basically was like, whoa, the way that I cook, the way that I enjoy food, the way that I want to cook for my family has completely changed overnight. I no longer have time to like use 3 pots. I no longer have time to stew something for 3 hours, braise something for 4 hours. Everything has changed. And so I came up with this concept for a next book called What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking. And this is 2019 now. Yeah, he was born in 2019. So I came up with this and I pitched it to Chronicle. They had right of first refusal. In this short of a time, so from 2015 when I got that first deal to 2019, this is when what you're saying of all you had to do for Just Married was write the book. Exactly. Now they wanted every cookbook author to have their own built-in audience, publicize it themselves, do everything themselves, which makes sense. But the cookbook landscape had changed that much in those short 4 years that I couldn't get a deal. So I took to Chronicle, took it everywhere.
Wow, so they exercised that right of
Oh,
refusal.
they
Ouch.
exercised that right hard. And they were so kind about it. We love this concept, but you have no social following. And I was like, well, you didn't care about that 2 years ago. What the heck? And it was such a different book, right? Just
Amazing
Married.
how fast that changed
Yes.
in the industry.
Yes,
And that is the biggest fear of a lot of people out there,
totally.
that they have all this to say and do and give the world around food, but they don't have a following.
A following. And at first I was pissed. I, like a real recipe developer, can't get a cookbook deal. And I was furious. And so first I rebelled and I like turned off my Instagram and I was like, I'm just going to be a professional recipe developer. Screw them. And I turned off my Instagram, stopped posting. And then basically COVID happened. And I was like, okay, Caroline, this is your moment. On March 16th, California closed down on March 17th. On March 16th, I was down in Monterey at a food photography studio working on like a $50,000 huge campaign for Corona beer. Needless to say, the campaign never aired. Everything went dead after this. So for a freelance recipe developer trying to get work in a global pandemic where people can't buy groceries, all of my jobs were gone. I was like, okay, I have all the time in the world to work on that following that they've been telling me to do. Mind you, like I wanted that. Like I want my own name in the food space, right? Like I wanted to be able to share recipes from myself, but I had this sort of stick up my butt. I was like,
Little chip on your
a little
shoulder.
chip on my shoulder about
Little
being
potato chip on your
rejected.
shoulder.
Yeah, a nice little potato chip on my shoulder. I was like pissed from the way that the cookbook thing had gone. So I was like, eh. So all of a sudden all these jobs are gone and I was like, okay, I guess this is my moment. I need to build that audience and go for it. And so that's what I did. And that's when my career really changed.
You started with Instagram?
Mhm.
How do you build an Instagram following from scratch?
Show up every single day, all the time, constantly, and you give the people what they're asking for. I was completely devoted to my Instagram following for a full year. So I had maybe 2,000 followers when COVID started, friends and family and people I'd picked up along the way from sharing recipes. And I started just cranking recipes. So I did this series called Quarantine Kitchen, and I'd be like, Carrie, what's in your pantry right now? You know, I would do like an Instagram live. Carrie, what's in your pantry? And you'd be like, sardines and rice. And I would like come up with some amazing meal for you to cook. And I'd like write up the whole recipe. I mean, I was working nonstop. I had a 1-year-old at the time. I was pregnant with my next son. And I didn't sleep for a year, truly. I like just cranked out recipes. And I was like, what do you guys want to see? You know, what are you looking for? I gave the people what they wanted 24/7, like at all times. And I really.
Can I just say, it doesn't sound like it was maybe the healthiest thing?
No, it absolutely wasn't. I think I slept like 5 hours a night for the first year. I was posting recipes to my website, doing anything kind of to build this audience.
Did you just become obsessed?
Yeah.
Okay.
I became like totally obsessed. It was kind of fun because it was pandemic days. So I was just at the house with the baby, with my husband. He works in biopharmaceuticals, so he was an essential worker. So he was off. So I was like home with the baby. For the first few months, I had a really difficult time trying to get these recipes out because I was like, oh, nobody wants to see like a baby in these. They want to see me, a professional cook, sharing recipes. So I was trying to like fit it into his nap time and edit it during his nap time and like get it out. What I quickly realized was I couldn't do it and I needed to just have the baby like on my hip or have the baby like in the carrier. And my audience really exploded and grew so much faster once I started showing like how I actually get dinner on the table pregnant with a kid.
What do you think the message there was? Authenticity?
Authenticity. The first couple of months, I was sharing just food, only food, like none of me, not who I was, not who my family was, not, you know, this cool house that we bought in Carmel Valley, like none of that. It was just the food. And I thought when you start a business, everyone's like, niche down. You need to niche down. And I was like, okay, niche down, like quick, easy recipes. That's it. But I didn't have enough hours in the day to share content if I was like trying to X my husband and my baby out of it and have it just be like this professional cook person. So I started like letting them in and showing people my son getting the eggs from the chicken coop and what a disaster bedtime was that night. And that's when I really started to grow because people saw who I am outside of just food. It worked. And I now have a community who are like so incredible. And I feel like they really know me and I don't know them back. So it's a weird dynamic, right? But it's an incredible community. I launched my cookbook tour 10 days ago or something, and every single event sold out almost immediately. And it was the coolest. I mean, that whole day I was like walking around in a daze because I was like, what? How? And it's because I have shown up and given them the types of recipes and content.
How did you finally get the book deal?
We're kind of still there. So I start to grow this Instagram audience, like really build it up. And in December of 2020, I think my agent Sarah came back and was like, I now maybe had like 20,000 Instagram followers. And she was like, I think this is enough. And they're like engaged enough that you could now get a cookbook deal. And I was like, I have a different idea. And this is when Patreon, do you remember like COVID like really popped off Patreon? All the Bone App people were kind of leaving Bone App and going to Patreon. And I saw that and I didn't want my consumers, mostly like busy young families. I was like, there's no way that my friend, you know, Mary Pell with 3 babies is going to get on Patreon to check a separate app than Instagram. I was like, I don't think Patreon's it for me. So I started to hear about Substack a little bit. It was still really early Substack days. And Substack, if you're not familiar, is a newsletter platform. So think MailChimp, but you can create a paid newsletter. So people can go on and pay a subscription to be subscribed to you.
Did you have a newsletter before that?
So in my 5 hours of sleep a night haze trying to like build this audience, I had watched some or listened to some podcast. I cannot remember what it was. That was like your most important thing as an internet creator is your newsletter database. Instagram could change its algorithm tomorrow. TikTok could finally get banned. every social media site, like you can't rely on it as your income, but your newsletter, you know that when you send an email, it goes into their inbox and they see it. Instagram, you can post and you will never see my post, you know? So I'd seen this, so I had started building a newsletter, and I would basically just share, like, here are the 4 recipes I shared on Instagram this week. It's Easter. Here's a roundup of 5 great Easter recipes. It was just like a newsletter that had no real direction. So December 2020 comes around. I've been seeing, Patreon, Substack, and I decided to launch a paid Substack. So I got onto the Substack platform, started sending my free newsletter from there for about a month, and I started crafting its direction. So no longer was it like, here's a roundup of 5 soups, here's a roundup of 5 salads. It was one recipe, a full recipe that was exclusive to the newsletter that I sent out every Sunday. And so I did that for like a month to get people like used to this new format,
And how did you know to do that? Because there weren't really a lot of Substack best practices,
Yeah.
nor had Substack started reaching out to you directly.
No, they sure hadn't. I just did it. I knew that people really had come to trust me for like quick and easy and simple and reliable recipes. When I posted something on Instagram, people cooked it and they reshared it. And I would just post the recipe there in the caption, And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try to take the recipe out of the caption and say, for this recipe, I'm sending it out to subscribers tomorrow. And I kind of build it as, and it's true, I build it as like, this is a much easier, much better format. You can print it because, oh my God, following a recipe on Instagram, it's horrible. You're like screenshotting. You have to take 3 different screenshots of the caption because like it can't fit on one page. So I was like, okay, this is a much better experience coming to your inbox. You can print it. I got you guys. And people were like psyched about it. They were like, okay, cool. And it could be seasonal. I was like, okay, it's 4th of July. I'm going to send a 4th of July. Oh, this is December. We're getting soup. We're getting short ribs. Like I was really working with the seasons and the making it something that they like thought they had to go get. I did that for like a month, really grew my audience that way. One of my things that I did to grow my newsletter database was, do you remember on Instagram you used to not be able to have the swipe up link? Like you couldn't link anything unless you had 10,000 followers.
Mm-hmm.
So before I had 10,000 followers, I would put a question box and I'd be like, put your email here if you want to join my newsletter, just because the easier you
were
make.
doing it manually?
Oh, yes, Carrie.
Wow.
I paid one of my cousins who was like an undergrad and so like was out of school, like $50 to do it one time because it was so many emails. Because I'd post this sexy short rib video, pictures, da-da-da. If you want this, put your email here.
I think people are starting to get a picture of you. You're very clever when it comes to these platforms.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe it's that marketing background. I definitely feel like, especially in those early days, it was just like guerrilla marketing.
But you knew what to say no to, like you didn't do Patreon.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much that comes our way, and I think that's why people are so confused.
Yes.
Do I focus on Instagram? Do I do TikTok? Do I do Patreon?
Yes.
Do I do a Substack? When did the Substack work start to pay off?
So I launched it. So I did that like month of free, like getting them used to the new thing. And then about a month in, I sent out the recipe and I said, FYI, this is the last free one. If you want to subscribe to support my work, here's how to do it. And overnight, I always have 50 side hustles. Like I thought this was going to be another side hustle. I was like, oh, this will be nice cash flow, reliable. Because at this point, I'm still sort of a freelance recipe developer. The work has started to come back by December 2020. So I'm still like a freelance recipe developer. That's how I'm making most of my money. I'm doing like Zoom cooking class. I'm doing 50 things. But it was like, oh, this will be a nice, couple $1,000 a month. Maybe that would be insane. So I launched, and overnight, I think I got 500 paid subscribers. At the time, it was $35 a year, which is the price of a cookbook. And so I was like, instead of a cookbook, I'm launching this as a newsletter. So like this is your, it's not going to get dusty on a shelf. Instead, you're going to, you get a new recipe every week. Like I'm here to talk you through it. We'll cook it as a community, cook it that week. That was sort of my thing and still is. Like I want you to cook it that week. Don't save it for later. Try this new recipe now. And 50 people are tagging me in it a day. And it creates this like big momentum around the recipe. So I got like 500 paid subscribers overnight. Whatever 500 times 35 is, I was like, okay, this could be a thing.
Great start.
I'm going to put some effort behind this. So it's one recipe a week. And so it really just became my focus. I think people, when they launch a paid thing, like you're paying me personally for my work, I think a lot of people, women especially, are afraid that they're going to turn people off. They're like, oh, if I talk too much about it, the people who don't pay me are not going to like my content. And I just was like, screw that. If they're not paying me for my content, why are they important to me? And I always have said, if you can't pay and you want this, email me and I'll subscribe you for free. So like that was never a concern in my book. If you're going through a hard time, I subscribe all military spouses for free, teachers. If you're going through something, email me and I'm going to subscribe you. So with that in mind, I am like cranking. It's all I talked about for 6 months was showing the development process, showing, my son's trying it, showing like my husband does these funny reviews of it. He's like the least critical critic. He likes everything that I cook. So like everything I cook.
Sounds like Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Ines Jeffrey.
Yeah, he's Jeffrey. Everything he tastes is the best thing I've ever cooked. So I just ripped on all I talked about was what to cook when you don't feel like cooking. And I shared the link constantly, or at first that question box. And then once I got 10,000 followers, the link. And I just didn't worry about losing people who were pissed. I had a recipe go viral recently. It's this egg salad recipe that is from the newsletter. It was like a 2-year-old recipe and I shared it recently and it went super viral. And the caption is recipe on whattocook.substack. And the comments are like, you're going to post something and not share the recipe?
Oh, people
and
hate that.
Oh, people hate it. And I'm like, yeah, this is my business.
We still have to
Yes.
talk about the cookbook a little bit more.
Yeah, we do.
Because it's going to be out in a few weeks.
Yes, it is. Okay, so
you did get that deal.
So I got that deal. It all came back around. I launched the newsletter 2020, basically grew it. So those 500 subscribers grew to, we're at 20,000 paid subscribers today. I think like 180 total subscribers, so including the unpaid guys. So it grew.
Wait, go back to that.
Yeah.
So how many are paid? How many are unpaid?
So I have 180,000 total subscribers, and 20,000 of them pay $50 a year.
That's impressive.
Thank you. Substack has grown so much. So when I started, it was really a newsletter platform. Like that was it. There was no community building. Since I have been there almost 4 years, they now have kind of an internal Substack community growth. It's making some writers mad because they're like, I don't want to be on Instagram again. And now there's kind of like a social media aspect within Substack, but it's called Notes. And it's basically like a Twitter where you can share your thoughts, but I just use it to share the newsletters.
So wait, where is this?
It's within Substack.
So
like
anybody can access it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Anybody can access it. What it's doing is really allowing growth from within Substack. So for the first 2 years of Substack, I was really just growing by sharing it on my Instagram, word of mouth, you cooking it, tagging me, and sharing a link that way. So total word of mouth growth and just via my own Instagram, that constant plugging of my own product and lifestyle. Then they launched probably a year ago this internal recommendation system. So if you have a Substack, you can recommend mine. And then when somebody follows you, it says, do you also want to follow What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking? So that has really been this explosion. I get like 1,000 new subscribers every 5 days or so. And 40% of my growth is from within Substack itself.
How much churn?
It's not a lot. Yeah, I have a really high retention rate, again, because I think I'm providing a product that people actually use. There's definitely those people who, subscribe and they go, this is the new me. I'm going to cook a new recipe every week. And then they quickly forget that it exists and that they delete it immediately. There's definitely some of that. We really have built this community. There's a private chat function as a part of the Substack that I really like to foster and have, what's everybody cooking this weekend? Here's what I'm cooking. Like, oh, Carrie's cooking this. Ashley's cooking that. Oh, Ashley's doing this riff on that recipe. Like, share a picture. It's a really great internal community there on Substack that has grown into this, now we can talk about the book, this community of supporting the book. So 2022, I'd been growing the Substack for a couple of years, and Amanda Englander, who's a editor, and she's now at Union Square. She was at Clarkson Potter. She's an editor. She reached out to my agent because she knew I was on sort of a maternity leave. And she reached out to my agent and was like, whenever Caro is ready, I want the cookbook basically, here's what I can offer. She doesn't have to write a proposal. I've already shown it to my team. The Substack is the proposal, which, as you know, because you've written a cookbook, writing a proposal is hell. It's like you have to write 50 pages long. You have to say what the chapters are. And so just someone said, and Sarah and I, my agent, had been talking, should we do it? But I was like having all these babies and really busy with the newsletter. And so it just wasn't top of mind to write the cookbook. Yeah.
You had pretty much shelved the idea?
I had
Because it was 3 years.
Yeah. I had totally shelved. I had shelved it. Yeah.
Did you think you would have one eventually? Or did you want one eventually?
I honestly, the Substack was growing so quickly and was so lucrative that it wasn't top of mind to write that cookbook.
Also, were you maybe thinking Substack is the new cookbook?
Right. A little bit of that. And then I would start to get people like, love you, love your work, but like, I really want, when are you going to write that cookbook? Like, people were starting to chirp about it. And so I was starting to think about it. And also, there's something about a cookbook, right? It's why we love
cookbooks.
We love cookbooks. And having that physical, I don't know, I'm so proud of the Substack, but it's like a different level. Something about like holding that book and seeing all the recipes in it. And it also just becomes the hardest you ever work is for that cookbook. So, I mean, my newsletter recipes, we work out really hard. I have a full team now who, edit and test. But that, oh man, a cookbook, just such a labor of love. I think I want to be like a cookbook author. Like I want to write a lot of cookbooks. It's so fun. It's so hard, but it's so fun. There's definitely that thing where like it provides a momentum and like something to talk about and something to share. And like I've never done a what to cook when you don't feel like cooking Substack tour, but here I am. I wrote the book and now I'm going on this 18-city tour.
18 cities?
Yes, Carrie.
Oh my gosh. I've been doing this for a long time. 18 cities.
I know, I don't. It just happened.
You're like the Taylor Swift of cookbooks.
Thank you so much. That's literally, yes. Yeah, the 18-city tour, I think because I've been growing this audience and I have such a like tight community, people kept saying, what about? And I was like, okay, let's add one more. I couldn't stop. I know my poor family, they're going to forget what I look like. It's going to be a wild August and September.
How far is it stretched over?
August, September, and like a little bit of October.
Okay.
Yeah, 2.5 months.
All right, let's go back to
It's gonna be
Substack
great.
because
Okay,
we got to
Substack.
give people some best practices.
Yes.
So you did all that through hard work, being really smart and clever. I think people are afraid today it's too late. Is it too late?
I don't think so. I've thought about that a lot too because right now Substack's really booming. Like every single day it seems like a new former blogger or current blogger or Instagrammer, whatever, is joining Substack. Like it's really insane how much it's booming right now. I think there's two ways to approach Substack. You either have an audience on Instagram already or TikTok or whatever. You have them already and they support you and they are your community and you can bring them over and create a paid community out of that. Or I also, like I was talking about with the new Substack tools, I've seen if you really put your all into it and you make it consistent and you make it a great offering, I think consistency is key. I think a lot of people come to Substack and they expect it to just happen for them. You have to be consistent. I send on Wednesdays and I send on, it used to be Sunday, now it's Saturday. So I send on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and then I send a meal plan on the first Friday of every month. And it will be in your inbox at 5 a.m. EST. Nothing will change the fact that it will be there. And when Substackers don't have that consistency, what are we paying for? A lot of Instagrammers, TikTokers come over and they're like, I'm creating a Substack. And then like you don't hear from them for 3 weeks.
After a while, you're like, why am I paying for this?
Why am I paying for this? There's literally not been any new content. Or they'll come, here's my new content. And it's like a YouTube video from 2 years ago. And so I think you have to have a consistency of offering and a consistency of timing. I think those two things are key. If you're just a writer, you love writing about food or lifestyle or whatever, but you don't have a huge social following, I do think there's potential for you to really thrive with those things. A killer offering, you got to get the branding down. You got to get everything down. And then you got to work that internal Substack system. I call it flirting within Substack. Flirt with an author who has, also 5,000 or less subscribers and do like a cross promotion. flirt with a bigger author and like offer to write. If you see that every Wednesday they share 5 things my friends loved, offer to be one of those friends and like curate a really cool section. Find ways to plug into other Substacks that are thriving and successful. It's so easy. Substack makes it almost too easy to subscribe to other publications once you're on one. Get in there and work the internal system. If you do have a following, you also still need to be doing that. Just come at it from both angles.
You've referred a few times to Substack tools.
When I say Substack tools, there's guest posting. So when I went on maternity leave, a lot of awesome women came in and did guest posts for me. So basically, guest posting is one of those tools that I'm talking about for collaboration. And then notes, that sort of Twittery, Instagram-y thing that I was saying a lot of authors are pissed about because they're like,
Do I
don't want
have
more
to
social.
have my own Substack to have access to notes, or anybody who just subscribes?
No, I think
can
as long as you
access that?
subscribe, you
Okay.
can access. It's definitely, so Substack has an app. It's not the best, but it's definitely there and very easily accessible. And then also if you're on like my Substack, you can click over to notes. But a lot of notes right now, because it's a new tool, right? It's people like getting used to using a new basically social media network. A lot of it is just authors flirting with authors and just authors sharing each other's stuff. I mean, the Substack community is so huge now of authors that I think it's a lot of just inner author chatting with each other, sharing each other's stuff, yada, yada. I will go on and, if I want to flirt with some cool lifestyle person who I'm hoping they'll share my cookbook, I'm not just going to make a cold ask. I'm not just going to like ask, Leandra Medine to share my thing. I'm going to share 3 posts of hers over the next month. And then I'm going to just slip into her DMs and be like, hey, I love your work. Here's my stuff. I think this would really relate to you. So flirt, 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 flirt.
Substack is your job.
Substack is my job,
Yeah.
100%. I'm like, am I a food writer? Am I a content creator? I'm a food content creator, I guess. Substack is my main job. And now my side hustle is brand partnerships. So Substack is my main shtick. I'm also a cookbook author. So like that's another sort of revenue
Right, an 18
driver.
city tour.
18 city tour and
Are
then
you on-
brand partnerships.
Are you on TikTok?
I'm on TikTok. I don't community build on TikTok. I like reshare my Instagram reels, but I don't work the system. If I had extra hours in the day, I would, but I have 3 little boys, 5, 3, and 1, and I just had to call it somewhere, and TikTok is sort of okay, I just don't have time for it right now.
I think one of the most important things you said in this whole entire conversation was, I don't community build on there.
Yeah.
So if you're not looking at your platforms in a community building mindset, it's
There's
not
no
going
point.
to succeed.
There's no point. Yeah. You can post all your stuff to TikTok. I'll have recipes go viral on TikTok and it does nothing because I'm not there responding, chatting, talking to other creators, sharing. You have to flirt on all these platforms. You've got to get on there and flirt if you want it to succeed. You've got to be responding to your DMs, responding to every single comment, really, really building a community and getting to know those people who are taking time out of their day to follow you and comment on your stuff. So yeah, I am a full-time community builder on Instagram and Substack. And yeah, TikTok's just a platform where I reshare.
And I think the fact that you have an 18-city tour shows how committed you are to this audience.
With the book versus Substack thing, not only am I so excited because I'm really proud of the book, like it's my best work. It's organized by how many minutes each recipe takes. So it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45, and then like stick it in the oven for an hour kind of things. So I'm really excited about the way it's organized and the types of recipes and just what a great tool. I really think this cookbook will sit on counters and make lives easier because like you get home from soccer practice and you're like, okay, I've got 45 minutes. The kids are starving. Or you're like, I've got 5 minutes. Like, what does she have for me? I think that'll be an amazing resource. And then also the fact that it's sending me out on this tour to meet everyone. It's been 4 years of really hustling to build this community of mostly women and to create that community. And I'm so excited to get out and I'm doing tons of different types of events. Like I'm doing some speaker events and some parties and some just signings. I'm really excited.
You touched on sponsored things a little bit. How do you integrate that into Substack?
That's a good question.
Can you put affiliate links? Can you have ads and sponsorship?
It's a good question. So with my paid newsletters, I don't like to do, it's like paying for Netflix and then there's an ad. You're like, excuse me? So with my paid newsletters, I don't like to do sponsored stuff. But on Wednesday, I send out a newsletter. I have a podcast called So Into That. It's on summer break right now because, oh my gosh, podcasting is so much work. Oh, why didn't you warn me? Wow. Okay. So podcasting is also a full-time job. So I basically created another full-time job for myself. And with the tour, with my children home, I was like, okay, summer break. So the podcast is called So Into That. And I chat with cool people about things that we're into right now. And so I've continued that as a newsletter. So on Wednesdays, I share a bunch of things that I'm really into right now. Sometimes it's interviews with people. Sometimes it's, here's 10 things that'll make your summer better, whatever. On Wednesdays, that is unpaid content. That goes to all subscribers. And on Wednesdays, I feel comfortable sharing affiliate links, sponsored content there. So like Costa Rica olive oil is one of my favorite partners. It's really freaking good olive oil.
Product.
It's a beautiful product. And there I will share, like, here's what to get for mom for Mother's Day. Here's my top recommendation, Costa Rica. And they'll pay me a sum for that. And I feel great about that,
Right, it's a product you
this
use.
is unpaid. Yeah. This is an ad. And it's also, it's a product that I really use. Brands want to be on the newsletter because, again, back to that algorithm, every now and then your sponsored content on Instagram just flops. And by every now and then, I mean most of the time, because Instagram sees that hashtag ad and they don't push it to people. It's really frustrating, right?
No, it's interesting. You see these people with gigantic followings and then they've got like
500 likes.
Or, 10 comments on it. And you're like, how is that even possible?
Yes.
Are you part of any of those affiliate networks, LTK?
I am.
I know that's more fashion.
Yeah, I do LTK. I do Amazon affiliate. You know what? Actually, on my paid newsletter, I link all the tools you need. I found just in my conversations with people when I was first building this community in 2020, a lot of people would be like, I get to the end of a recipe and I realize, in step 4, I needed a colander and I don't have a colander. It's so frustrating. So I list all of the tools at the beginning and I link to all of those because these are like a lot of novice cooks, a lot of great cooks also are What to Cook subscribers, but it's a lot of novices who are like, what's a nonstick pan? What's a cast iron? So I link to my favorites and those are affiliate links.
Okay.
And so I do make a decent little bump from that.
So interesting. Have you thought about, in addition to sharing your recipes, sharing business advice? I mean, I know you are. You came on our membership meeting. You're doing this interview. I feel like you have a lot to share.
I get asked that pretty often. And right now, it's like TikTok. It just has to take the back burner, right? I would love to. Doing that meeting with the Bomb Squad was like so fulfilling for me. And I kept having conversations for like the next few days on Instagram with people just asking me follow-up questions. And I loved that so much. I love anytime a woman wants to start a Substack, I'm like, okay, here's my playbook. Here's what to do. Like, I'll have this conversation with them. I don't have the time in the day to do it repeatedly. So, yeah, I've thought about, do I like record something with Substack to share how I grew it? It's definitely on my list, but it is getting TikToked right now.
All right. I'll ask you one question because we have no time for the speed round. Our final question is always, if you had to be trapped on a desert island with one food celebrity, who would it be and why?
Oh, Ina, easily.
I knew you
Does
were gonna
everybody say Ina?
It's Ina, Martha, or Anthony Bourdain.
I wish
usually.
that I had had a different answer, but it's 100% Ina. I had a roommate in college who was obsessed with the Food Network, and I had just never really watched it. My mom wasn't a Food Network watcher, and she recorded every single episode of Barefoot Contessa. And then we would cook them. None of our friends, college, nobody has money. Like, we were eating like scraps. And we would pool our money and have these like Barefoot Contessa dinner parties. Ina taught me how to cook. I love her.
Ina's the bomb.
Ina's the bomb.
So are you, Caro.
Oh, thank you. You're the bomb.
That's it for today's show. I would love for you to subscribe to Radio Cherry Bomb on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a rating and a review. Let me know what you think about the show and who you would love to hear from on a future episode. Our theme song is by the band Tra La La. Joseph Hazen is the studio engineer for Newsstand Studios at Rockefeller Center. Our producers are Catherine Baker and Elizabeth Vogt. Our associate producer is Jenna Sadhu. And our content and partnerships manager is Londyn Crenshaw. Thanks for listening, everybody. You're the bomb.